I'm Marilyn. I know how important it is to get correct information when dealing with phobias, anxiety, and panic, because I lived with the pain and anguish they caused in my life for over 13 years. When I was at my very worst, I was unable to leave my house, get into my car, and drive 2 short miles to our nearest grocery store without experiencing anxiety and panic. And that's because over that period of 13 years, without finding proper help, my fears were allowed to grow and multiply. Certainly the anxiety intensified until even the thought of leaving my own house terrified me. I looked for help on many occasions. I went from doctor to doctor with my questions, looking for answers, but there just didn't seem to be any. And of course, that only made me feel more lost to my world of fear. I was put on medication several times, but that wasn't the answer for me either. I was only able to fully recover when I found behavioral therapy and learned about my many other choices. And today, my life is better than it's ever been before. But I haven't forgotten what it was like to feel lost and alone with my fears. To think I was the only person in the world who woke up each morning afraid to face the day ahead. And that's why I've helped develop this video. I wanted you to have available for yourself the information that played such a vital part in my own recovery. There's so much we can do to help ourselves face our fears. And there's a lot support people can do to help us along the way. And by understanding phobias, anxiety, and panic, and by learning good coping techniques and relaxation exercises, and by facing our fears one step at a time, we can overcome them.
For the last 15 years, I've been working with individuals of all ages, helping them overcome their fears, their anxieties, and their phobias, and even paralyzing panic. During this period of time, there have been some very exciting developments in the whole area of phobia treatment. No longer do we just sit back and talk to people about what they're afraid of. We actually do things to help them go out and overcome their fears and phobias. In this video, we're going to share with you information we have gathered from our own experience and also from other phobia experts across the country. We will provide you with techniques you can utilize to overcome your fears and phobias. Everyone's fears are just a little bit different, but the basic principles in overcoming them are the same. Some of you who have caught your fears in the very early stages will be able to use this video and the workbook alone to overcome them. Others of you may already be in therapy or need a therapist to overcome your problems. If so, just like the patients in our clinic, you can use this video program as an adjunct to your treatment. There are an increasing number of therapists who specialize in treating phobias and related problems. We will provide you with a telephone helpline or pop line so that you can call us, not only for the name of a therapist, but also for information about support groups and materials that may be of use to you. Whether or not you're using this program by yourself or with a therapist, there are 3 basic steps to overcoming a fear or phobia. The first step is comprehending. You must first understand the nature and the causes of your particular fear. This doesn't mean that you have to go back deep into your childhood necessarily, but it does mean that you must understand the mechanisms that keep your particular fear reaction going. So the first step is to understand the enemy. FDR said, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself." In this video, we're going to show you that you have nothing to fear, including fear itself, once you understand it. The second step is coping. We're going to show you a variety of coping techniques that will help you lower your anxiety and counter the fear reaction, help you deal with all those thoughts and feelings that make you want to flee situations. Next, we will then utilize these coping techniques to help you take the most important step of all, and that is to confront your fears, to break them down into their smallest parts and step by step dismantle the fear reaction until you overcome your problems. By using the 3 C's, comprehending, coping, confronting, you will be able to begin the process of reversing the tide of fear. The first thing that you have to understand and accept is no matter what your fear or phobia is, it's not so strange or unusual or even rare. Most people who have problems like this don't talk to others about what they're afraid of.
What happened is a lot of my friends thought I just didn't like them anymore. I mean, I just stopped going places with people and I wouldn't tell them why.
As a result, they look at the common man on the street and think they have no fears. This is not true. Did you think that other people had similar feelings, similar experiences as far as your fears and phobias?
I knew some people did, but I didn't think they were like mine. I thought they were a lot less, and I thought that they handled them a lot better than I did. I mean, I knew that, you know, people had fears, but they all seemed to be doing so well.
As you watch people pass by on the street or in crowds, you would think that most of them are free of fear. This is really the furthest thing from the truth. But most people with fears and phobias don't share their own fears, so they don't find out what other people's fears are. In actuality, people are not the way that they seem. As you watch people passing by, you can't tell, but they may have all kinds of fears, even the exact same fear that you have. In fact, people can be quite panic-stricken and to the outsider appear to be just hurrying or walking through the crowd. They don't look different than anybody else, but you feel very strange and different with your own fears when you're having them.
My major fear was fear of flying.
When did this start?
Well, it was late in my life. I had been flying for 25 years as not piloting, but as a passenger on commercial airlines for 25 years. And then one day I got on a plane coming back to my home city from New York City, and I just panicked.
Tell us about that panic attack. Tell us what it felt like physically, what you thought, etc.
Well, I wanted to bolt off the plane. I felt I was going to die. It was a feeling, it was the worst feeling I ever had in my life, because I was not in control anymore. Something had gone wrong, and I didn't know what it was.
And physically, what was going on inside?
Physically, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. It was like hyperventilating, yet it wasn't hyperventilating, but it was very much like that.
And the other sensations you had, body, heart, talk about whether everything was going on.
Yeah, I had shortness of breath. I couldn't catch my breath, like hyperventilation. And I was just in a panic. I thought I may have been having a stroke or a heart attack. It's, looking back on it, it seems sort of funny. I went to them and I said, "Can you put the plane down in Charlotte?" You know, and they don't. It was a nonstop flight. They weren't stopping in Charlotte, and I even got up and tried to. I made a fool of myself. Really, I was frightened to death and wanted down. I wanted out of that thing, and that's.
And what happened when you landed?
Well, when I landed, I was very weak, could hardly walk, and called my physician, and he prescribed a pill for me that would calm me down.
Okay, but then what happened?
I booked a flight a few months later. It's interesting, I booked the flight about 3 days before I took the flight, and I was feeling quite anxious. I really did realize that I was frightened, very frightened. But I said, I'll get on the plane. I know once I get on the plane, I can manage it all right. Sat down, and they were preparing to take off, and we were all loaded in, and there were people on either side of me, and I panicked in a tremendous way. Nothing would have allowed me to take that flight that day. I had to get up, and I bolted off of the plane.
You know, Joe is not alone. A study a few years ago by Boeing Aircraft found that over 25 million Americans had such a strong fear of flying that either they would not get on an aircraft, or if they did, they white-knuckled it all the way through the flight, often with the aid of alcohol or some other tranquilizer. Twice as many people or more have a fear of public speaking. 19 million Americans have such strong dental fears that they avoid going to the dentist and as a result don't get the dental care that they need. Maybe as many as 307 out of 1,000 individuals have a strong fear of heights. 122 out of 1,000 are claustrophobic. Other studies have found that 1 out of 10 or some 13 million Americans suffer from some form of severe anxiety disorder, including obsessive-compulsive disorder, phobias, or generalized anxiety disorder. These numbers may be an underestimate. A very interesting study recently by Dr. David Barlow found that over 30% of the adult population that he surveyed had experienced panic symptoms in situations that had no immediate imminent danger. Taken together, what do these statistics mean? They mean that anxiety is the #1 emotional problem facing people today. So if you thought that your particular fears and phobias were so strange, unusual, or rare, well, they're not. To help you understand this and really realize it, we want you to turn now to your workbook and first calculate the number of people in your city or town that have any type of fear or phobias. Then we're going to have you calculate the number of people who have the exact same fear or phobia that you have that live near you. As you can see from your calculations, there must be a whole lot more people than you ever imagined who have fears and phobias just like yours. Like most people, you probably have spent a lot of energy hiding your fears from other individuals. And this is the reason why you have never learned from others about their own particular fears and the feelings they're experiencing. This is what makes you feel so alone and different. We want you to begin to reverse this process by opening your awareness and start to play a little game. Notice those people who are driving the access road next to the expressway. How many of them are avoiding getting on the expressway? In the supermarket, notice who is in the express checkout line. How many of them are avoiding being caught in a longer line? And how about at theaters or churches? How many of the people who are sitting in the back rows on the outside aisles are really there because they got there extra early, versus how many of those people are avoiding getting caught up front where they cannot escape? What about at a train station or a bus station? Begin to ask yourself, how many of those people are avoiding flying? And in buildings, how many people are taking the stairs rather than riding the elevators? Are they all doing this for their health? Through this little game, we want you to begin to ask yourself, who else in your community may be experiencing fears just like you have? Now, we understand when you have a panic attack, it may feel like you're going to die at any moment. But panic attacks and phobic reactions are not a sign of imminent death.
It started out driving. I focused on the driving, and I thought that the driving was what I was afraid of. But that wasn't really what it was.
Well, what was it? What did it spread to, and what was it?
Just a build-up over the years of a lot of manifested feelings, I think, that never were dealt with. And it just happened to be that when I was in the car that I had the panic attack. The first one was when I was on my way to work one morning, and I was on the expressway, and I started getting lightheaded. My chest was tight, it was beating fast. Then my arms were tingling and drawing in so that I could hardly hold the steering wheel. And then that was the first one.
Any
the
other
first
physical
horrible
symptoms?
one. Not at that time. Just feeling like I was going to have a heart attack. That's what I thought it was.
You thought it was a heart attack?
Yeah.
Okay. And what did you do at that point?
Well, I had to pull over and I had to call someone.
But still, you were thinking, I'm going to die any second.
Right. Death was the ultimate fear. I was going to die.
Okay. Symptoms of panic often include shortness of breath, smothering sensations, a choking feeling, palpitations or an accelerated heart rate, chest pain or discomfort, sweating, faintness, dizziness, lightheadedness, an unsteady feeling, nausea or abdominal distress, depersonalization or derealization in which things can seem unreal, or a person can even have the sensation of leaving their body, shifts in the visual field in which the world can look like you are seeing it through a tunnel, numbness or tingling sensations in the hands or legs or feet, flushes or chills, trembling or shaking, fear of dying, fear of going crazy or doing something uncontrolled.
I simply felt I was going to die. I felt that my breathing, I began to breathe irregularly. I had sweats. I knew I could not do that. Nothing would have enabled me to do that. Nothing. I couldn't have taken that flight that day.
Now, there's a very good reason for every one of the reactions and symptoms that you're experiencing. They are all a natural part of what we call the fight or flight response that was built into you to help you protect yourself from dangers. If you were a cave person and a saber-toothed tiger jumped out at you, you wouldn't have time to think how big he was or what angle to hold your spear. Instantly, your body would have to react. Your heart would beat faster. You would breathe faster to oxygenate blood to go to your system. The blood would drain from your face and from your extremities and go into the large muscles in your arms and your legs to help you be prepared to either run away or to fight the animal. And the tingling sensations and the shaking that you would have in your hands and your arms and your legs would be a natural part of this reaction. In fact, as the blood drains away from your hands and your feet, that gives the tingling sensation, this only means that you're less likely to bleed to death if you had been attacked by an animal. Now, we understand that when you have a reaction just like this, when there's no imminent danger such as a tiger jumping at you, it's very hard to understand and accept this.
It was sheer terror. You know, for somebody who's never experienced it, I know it would sound strange, but I can't imagine being more frightened. I mean, I can't imagine, it's sheer terror. It's, you're totally unsafe. I felt like I could die or I could get stranded. That was my main worry, is that I would be stranded and I couldn't get back. It's the most frightening feeling that I can imagine. I remember feeling like the trees were going to come into the road. I mean, all these things, and feeling trapped and just feeling like I can't get out of here.
And so, like approaching the front doors of the mall, or walking into the mall, what was closing in on you?
It was like, okay, it was like, that would be it. If I walk in there, I might freak out, die, go catatonic. I mean, this is a major thing. What will happen to me if I walk in? Yeah, it's a very major, scary feeling. And on top of that is the feeling that you have about yourself that there are millions of people doing this. Why can't I?
Even the feelings of depersonalization, derealization, the world looking funny like through a tunnel, time slowing down, are part of the mind's way of protecting you from the danger so that you can act to defend or protect yourself. They are not signs of going crazy. Now, we realize that all of these physical reactions and even the mental reactions you are having seem very strange to you and are not understandable given that there's no imminent danger that you can see, such as a tiger jumping out at you. However, you must remember, for the first time in history, we modern people can contemplate such abstract dangers as aneurysms in the brain, heart attacks, other things that are our modern-day saber-toothed tigers that may be internal, but are no less real or dangerous to us.
The thought that somehow I was going to plummet either out of that, it was truly it was a very illogical, I'm a very logical person, but this was a very illogical thought. The thought that is that I would plummet out of that thing.
Could you see it? What was your imagery?
My imagery was of my flying through the air, falling to the ground. And if I looked out, I was in a desperate panic. If I looked down, I was in a desperate panic because I could see myself plummeting down, and I would have to hold on to the bulkhead.
Most phobics have very vivid imaginations and are highly suggestible. This is another reason why your reactions to perceived danger may be stronger than the average person's. When you imagine whatever your particular catastrophe is, you probably see it not only in living color, but better than even Hollywood could produce.
I realized that the pilot was well trained and he could get us where we were going, and he valued his life as much as I valued mine. And another thing that was very important for me to realize, and this was a practical thing, that that bulkhead, that floor, was not going to go straight down, that below that floor was where they store the luggage, that I wasn't going to just fall through.
So you started to use your images for that.
That's right, and realizing there was something underneath there.
Would you actually see it? Would you image it?
Yes, I saw it. I would see it in my mind that that my little valise was down in there too, and everything, and I wouldn't just fall through to the ground. That wouldn't happen.
In addition to your physical reactions and those scary images that you show yourself, it's the what-ifs, it's the things that you say to yourself that cause the fear to continue and to escalate. Like old tapes that you play over and over, these thoughts go faster and faster the more anxious you are. And this is what makes it so hard to tell the difference between them just being a thought and reality.
You know, I'd get in the car and I would think, well, okay, if I go down this road, if I cross this road, I'm going to panic. If I panic, you know, nobody will be here to save me. I'll have a wreck, I'll pass out in the car, I'm going to die, and then therefore I would avoid. And then those thoughts were just like, you know, over and over and over.
Tell me about your what-ifs. What did you used to say to yourself before you learned how to deal with it differently? What were your what-ifs?
The what-ifs were, what if I get in the car, I'm alone, I have a panic attack, I can't breathe, I hyperventilate, I pass out, and I die. That was just the way that I thought of it.
There is a lot of shame and guilt that goes along with phobias. Many people see this as a sign of weakness or some kind of flaw in their personality. Men especially seem to have difficulty acknowledging that they have fears and anxieties.
Pretty much what I did was I beat myself down mentally because of that, because I felt like that I'd failed myself and others because I was not able to get up and speak how I should have.
You're really hard on yourself.
Yes, I was.
Rather than being due to weakness, most phobic reactions are due to inflexibility. Most people who develop anxiety disorders are overly controlled. Not only do they not like to show emotions like fear, they don't like to feel them. And the more that you try to control emotions, the more you feel out of control. Most people who are phobic are perfectionistic in this sense. They see the world in terms of black or white, not shades of gray. In order to feel okay, they have to keep everything being perfect. And this, of course, is an impossibility.
I was a real perfectionist at everything. Everything had to be just perfect, or it wasn't good enough. I wasn't good enough. You know, my house had to be perfectly spotless, and even when it's not, and I have a tendency to be that way now, things will be, the placemats will be out of place on the table, and it drives me nuts. And I have to tell myself that it's okay. You know, you live here. This is not a museum. You live in this house. So you just have to stop those thoughts.
In addition to a vivid imagination and being very suggestible, phobics also feel things very deeply. They are very sympathetic individuals, and even more so, they are very empathetic. This means that they have a flood of feelings going through them, and therefore trying to control them becomes even more difficult. Phobics also are often obsessive worriers. They go over and over in their head the things that they have not done right. As a result, not only do they not give themselves credit for what they are doing right, but they dwell on the negatives about themselves. This leads to many feelings of self-deprecation that only intensify the phobic reaction and keep it going. In trying to understand where your phobias come from, it's important to ask yourself when in your life they developed. Most people who develop specific fears of animals, bugs, lightning, weather, or even fears of heights and claustrophobia usually begin with these fears early in life, unless they've experienced some kind of recent trauma. People who are struggling with social phobias, such as a fear of public speaking, often develop these fears in early adolescence, where they're most susceptible to what others think about them, such as their peers. Most people who are experiencing panic attacks find these occurring either early in young adulthood, around the age of 20, or later in the 30s, after a long period of stress and a period during which they have continued to suppress their feelings, to stuff them in, and all of a sudden have them come out in one giant panic attack that overwhelms them.
There was I just moved into a new position, a lot of pressure from work, been in that position, had relocated, was in that position for about 6 months. There was talk at the meeting, at the dinner before, that there was going to be a possible promotion and relocation for me again. And at that time, the location was not desirable to me, and the position was, but I felt like I wasn't properly ready to take a position like that. So I did not get any sleep that previous night worrying about that, and I'm sure that compounded things.
Tell us a little bit more about what happened. Tell us about your first real panic attack while speaking in public.
situation was involved with a meeting, business meeting, in which we were at a location, and we'd broken out into small groups to study different things, different matters that we discussed. And they had asked a speaker to be assigned to each group. So I was chosen as that speaker for the group, not on my own accord, but basically elected. And the thing was that that was fine at the time, but there were other things going on that I was concerned about, and I did not have my full concentration. So we went back into the full meeting room with other people. I guess there were 45 to 50 people there. And upon listening to people up there speaking and knowing that I was going to have to get up there, my anticipation level raised. Started becoming very flushed in the face. I could feel, started perspiring. Heart was beating rapidly. And it was like I was going in, my head was going into a little bit of a spin. I knew at that time that I was not going to be able to get up and make the speech.
Right now, ask yourself, which of these patterns fit me the best? When did my particular fears and phobias begin? You may have to go back and think about how these fears have incubated. For example, if you were locked in a closet as a kid or bitten by a dog, it may be that you were able to suppress those feelings for many years, only to have them reemerge. Right now, go back, return to your workbook, and fill out the section that applies to where your fears come from. We are not born with our phobias. They are learned reactions. We learn them step by step. It is avoidance that is the real culprit here. For example, if your initial panic experience was in a restaurant, you may begin to avoid that particular restaurant, and then other restaurants that are similar to it. Pretty soon, you may even find it difficult to go into a fast food restaurant where you're going to take out food. It is this process of generalization that causes fears to spread. After a while, you're no longer afraid of the particular situation or even similar situations, but you actually become afraid of the fear reaction. It is this fear of fear that is the most debilitating aspect of phobic reactions, and it's what can cause it to limit your life in many ways.
You know, I related it to public speaking, and then all of a sudden, months, years down the road, it branched out to going to any social gatherings, any business gatherings, anything whereby I was uncomfortable with the people or unfamiliar with the people or the place. The other thing is that it even happened one-on-one. I would have a hard time meeting people for the first time one-on-one. Spread into personal life because the self-confidence level had gotten so low. In other words, over the years, I had just mentally downgraded myself that I did not have a lot of confidence that I felt like that I should have.
Okay. To help you better understand where your phobias came from and how they spread through this process of generalization, return to the workbook and fill out the appropriate sections.
This process of understanding and accepting is something that you will do over and over again. You're out in a mall and you start to get anxious. Think about the people who didn't go to the mall at all that day. Go back through your mind and think about how many million of Americans have fears. Remind yourself how many people in your area have phobias. See if you can pick out people who are not at all anxious, kind of anxious, and panicked. Even though you can't tell by looking, there are people out there that are feeling the whole range of such emotions. It may be hard for you to believe, but remember, they can't tell by looking at you either what you're feeling. Notice what you're feeling inside of your body. Is your heart beating fast? Are you having trouble breathing? Remind yourself that this is all part of the fight or flight response. It's because your mind perceives danger, and therefore it's a natural reaction. Your throat may feel dry, like it's closing up. Remind yourself that this has happened many times before and that you're not going to choke to death. It may feel like you can't breathe, but it's only muscle tension.
I couldn't breathe, or I felt that I couldn't breathe. It was like a knot in here all the time, and I constantly coughed. It was like I could never get enough air in. But yet, from what I'm told, it's I'm taking too much in, and I'm breathing too fast. And I didn't know how to regulate it unless I had a paper bag to breathe in.
So you used to use the paper bag?
No. I only used the paper bag maybe twice, but I would carry it around with me just in case.
In addition to being aware of and changing the things that you say to yourself about your symptoms, it also helps to learn to measure your anxiety level. This will help you see that fear is not an all or none phenomenon. To accomplish this, we use a scale developed by Dr. Joseph Wolpe called SUDS, which stands for Subjective Units of Discomfort Scale. Note that the D stands for discomfort, not death or disaster. This scale goes from 0 to 10, with 0 being totally relaxed and 10 being the worst panic you can imagine. Turn to the workbook and use the SUDS scales provided to help you measure your fear in different situations. If you use this scale properly, you will see your anxiety level rise as you go into a feared situation, peak, and then begin to drop. By timing how long your anxiety stays at its peak, you will be able to see that it does not last forever, even if it feels that way. What you're shooting for is working with moderate levels of anxiety until they actually do come back down.
What I needed to do at any point in time was to find out where my stress level was. And a lot of times I would find myself at a 6 or a 7 before I knew anything about it. One of the things that I learned was coping skills. In other words, being able to determine where your stress level was at a certain point. If it was higher than it needed to be, take some time, relax, get yourself back down to a more comfortable level so that you can work with it.
By learning to measure your fear and changing what you say to yourself about your symptoms, you'll be on the road toward learning to cope. There are, of course, many things that you may say to yourself that set off a panic or keep it going. You must become aware of all of your negative thoughts, including the catastrophic thinking you do about the big one. That's the one that's just around the corner waiting to get you, but never quite gets here. You have repeated these old thought patterns so many times that they become like old tapes. What you need to do is to label each of these tapes by name and then create new ones to go in their place. For example, label the old tape, "I'm going to have a heart attack" tape, shut it off, and use your new one. "I've had these symptoms 1,000 times and my doctor says it's not a heart attack." Review your old tapes that you used to say to yourself and then the new ones that you're going to put in their place before you go into situations that create fear for you. You have to practice these over and over again until the new ones go into a deeper groove and drown out the old tapes.
Each time I faced a fearful situation or a fearful object, a tape went off automatically in my head, and it played over and over and over, and I was helpless to stop it. I had to start at the beginning and work all the way through such catastrophic thoughts and images that by the time the tape was complete, I was panicked. And by learning some good thought-stopping techniques, I was able to interrupt that process and begin a new process of feeding in the correct information and to begin a relaxation exercise that was helpful to me so that I could go out and face those situations without such tremendous fear.
In addition to dealing with your thoughts, you must learn how to relax your entire body. This is the next part of coping. And what do you do to relieve your tension? Talk about using the relaxation training.
To take time for yourself, to take a few minutes away from everybody else, to do something that is relaxing to you instead of trying to tell yourself that you have to do everything and nobody can do it better than you can. And it's okay to let things go.
Once you've made the commitment to take time and learn how to relax, you can begin the process of specific relaxation training. We start off with breathing because it's so central to so many of the anxiety symptoms that people we work with get. In fact, hyperventilation accounts for many of these symptoms, such as dizziness, the tingling sensations that people get in their fingers, hands, legs, feet, tightness in the chest, that smothering sensation, even feelings of depersonalization. When you get anxious, you begin to breathe shallow, rapid little breaths, using only the upper part of your lungs. This leads to a tightness in the chest, which makes you feel like you can't breathe. You have to learn how to reverse this process so that you can begin to breathe easier and not so rapidly. Anna, many of the symptoms that you're having really are coming from hyperventilation. And that doesn't mean just breathing real rapidly, but it means shallow upper chest breathing. I'm going to demonstrate and teach you how to do more full diaphragmatic breathing. But first of all, I just want you to be aware of how you're feeling right now and place one hand up on the top of your chest and place the other one down on your stomach, okay? And I want you to go ahead and to breathe kind of like you breathe when you're anxious out, even more so than right now when you're out in the car, trapped on the expressway, okay? And notice how you're breathing. How are you beginning to feel?
Lightheaded, like it's cutting off.
Okay.
Like there's less and less air in there.
Okay, and notice how you're breathing. Notice what's happening. Can you see what's happening with your chest and with even your shoulders? How are you breathing?
It's all moving up.
Okay. And is your bottom hand on your diaphragm on your stomach, is that moving at all?
None.
Okay. Now we're going to teach you how to breathe differently. It'll be easier first to do it lying down. So I want you just to lie flat down. Okay. And again, place one of your hands up on the top of your chest and the other right over your belly button. Okay? And now when you inhale, let your mouth drop open. Okay. And when you inhale, I want you to let the air fill your stomach slowly first. So it's like a balloon. Okay, that's okay. You still notice that your top hand is moving more than your bottom. See what happens? That's good. Your stomach just moves some. That's it. Now we want your chest, your top hand to move as little as possible. When you inhale, breathing in is like inflating a balloon, slow and easy. Hold it. And now as you exhale, just let your stomach sink all the way down and relax. Think the word relax as you exhale. Slow and easy. I want you to notice the difference in how you're feeling. When you breathe in slow and easy. Let it last as long as it will, not too deep. And then as you exhale, slow, easy, even longer. Breathing in for a count of about 4 or 5. And let the exhaling last up to a count of 6 or 7. Slow and easy. Very good. Notice the difference. Notice how little your top hand, your chest is moving. And notice the difference in how you're feeling. And as you exhale, let each breath just escape, like letting go of a balloon. That's it. You're getting it. Something that just takes practice. Very good. That was very good. Just your diaphragm was moving that time, just the bottom hand. That's it. Long, slow exhale fully. Notice a little pause at the end of each breath. There's a relief. You don't have to stop your breathing, but there's a period there of rest. Just let yourself feel the relief of letting go of that breath. What difference do you notice? What do you feel, Donna, right now in terms of what's happening to you?
My shoulders are much more relaxed. They don't feel as tense as they did when I first started doing this.
Okay. And what else do you notice about the dizziness as you're breathing slow and fully?
It's not there. I just feel like real relaxed, like I could fall off to sleep.
Okay. That's it. Close your eyes. And just focus your attention on your breathing. Slow and easy. Breathing in for a count of somewhere in the range of 4 or 5, and then as you exhale, let it go even longer down to 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 out. Very good. Once you've learned how to breathe better, you're ready to learn another very important coping technique called progressive muscle relaxation. There are many, many books written on this subject and many tape series dedicated to teaching solely this skill. In your workbook, you will find a list of resources and basic instructions for how to tense and relax different sets of muscles in your body that often tense up in response to stress or anxiety. The key in doing these exercises is to heighten your awareness of the tension in a certain set of muscles and then suddenly release them so that you can feel relaxation beginning to flow. It's kind of like priming a pump to get it to flow downhill. Remember, this, like any new skill, takes a lot of practice. The key, in fact, is daily practice. And you may even need to practice several times a day at first. Use the relaxation training diary in your workbook to keep track of your progress. Also, see how practicing relaxation regularly can help you bring down your overall level of stress and thereby raise the threshold so that you have more distance between the level at which you actually panic and what you actually are functioning at. This can help you a great deal. Once you have mastered these exercises, you can adapt them to use them in a variety of settings where you may encounter stress or anxiety.
Sometimes when I would be driving to relax myself, I would do relaxation exercises at stoplights. For instance, tighten your fist really tight and then release them. Or you can take long, slow, deep breaths. And that usually would relieve a lot of the tension to help me to get to the next stoplight.
There's an added benefit to relaxing your body. You may begin to notice that the more relaxed your body is, the slower your thoughts race, and vice versa. This may help you let your thoughts pass easier. If you had a worried thought while practicing relaxation, let it pass. If this does not work, you may need to use thought stopping and/or thought blocking. In thought stopping, you say the word stop over and over again to yourself. You should imagine the word stop in large, glowing red letters flashing on and off. Stop, stop, stop. Each flashing of the word helps you block out the thoughts that are bothering you. If you're alone, you can even yell the word out loud. If you're in a place where this would be embarrassing or disruptive, just think it loudly to yourself.
Sometimes when I was feeling very anxious or panicked, I would see a large flashing stop sign in my mind and yell to myself, or if I was alone, out loud, stop. And then I would take in a deep breath, and when I exhaled, I would just will myself to relax. And then again, stop, and then relax. And that interrupted again the thought patterns that were so terrifying to me and brought on the process of relaxation.
Some people even use a rubber band on the wrist, which they pop at the same time they say the word stop, to help enhance the effect. In using this technique, be sure not to be negative with yourself, only with the thoughts. Never say to yourself anything like, stop you stupid fool, only idiots would think things like this. Instead, reassure yourself everyone experiences negative thoughts, and you should get credit for being able to recognize them and do something about them.
Thought-stopping techniques were very helpful to me when I was recovering. I remember the one I used most often was putting a rubber band around my wrist, and whenever I faced a feared situation or an object, I'd snap the rubber band and feel the sting on my wrist and say, that's real. This is real. The sting is reality. What you're thinking is just a thought or thoughts.
Thought blocking is a similar technique. Here you count backwards from 1,000. Again, use your very good visualization techniques and visualize the number, then say the word relax to yourself as you breathe out before going on to the next number. See that word relax real clearly also. Sometimes we even have people count backwards by 2s or 3s to help them occupy their mind and block out the negative thoughts while they're letting them pass. It's not necessary to go all the way to 0, but just until the thoughts stop. 1,000, relax. 997, relax. 994, relax. 991, relax. You can use the very same powerful imagery that makes your fears seem so real to you to help you overcome them. You can imagine being in the most relaxing place you've ever been to help you counter tension, stress, and anxiety. Also, try imagining yourself coping well in a situation. It's important to go over and over this in your mind before you go into the situation. Don't, however, imagine yourself not being anxious or doing it perfectly. Rather, imagine getting a little bit anxious or even moderately so, but successfully coping with the situation.
Well, when you're at a high state of anxiety, anything, the worst possible, you're always thinking about. You know it's going to happen, and the thing is that if you have a negative thought, you accent it even more or tenfold times. Whereby now what I try to do is think about the beach, the lake, something that's enjoyable to me, that's soothing, that's relaxing, and that helps bring my level down. And it can be in a car, it can be at the desk. I mean, I just have to take a few minutes, close my eyes, and get that image and relax a little bit.
Once you understand about your fears, and you have practiced relaxation and other coping techniques, you are already well on the way to reversing the process of avoidance. Now you are ready to really confront your fears in a step-by-step fashion. The key is to take the right size steps. If you tried to climb the Washington Monument one flight at a time, rather than one tiny step at a time, you would certainly get exhausted and fall. Similarly, if you break your fears into manageable steps and take them one at a time, you will be able to make good progress. Taking little steps and practicing your coping techniques is much better than testing yourself by trying to take very big, huge steps.
It took 6 months for me to really believe that I could try doing these things, and that the way out of the phobias was actually to go through them, to do these things. And it took Rena about 6 months to just give me enough confidence to even try. And I couldn't get here by myself for those 6 months. I had to be taken here. And that was a real problem, just even finding my way here. But then when I started driving a little bit, I would drive as far as I could, and I would call Rena, and she would meet me. And we would sit in the car, and we would talk. I mean, it was just basically the approach we were taking was just little by little trying to get out. And, if I could add, an extra foot each week, then that was fine with her. Or if I had to go back, that was fine with her. It was just basically trying to teach me that what I was afraid of was not driving or airplanes or that type of thing. I was afraid of this awful feeling.
Use the exercises in the workbook to help you set realistic goals at each stage and record your practice. As you practice all of your coping skills in the face of your fears, rate yourself using the SUDS level and watch the level go up and down. Stay with the situation and see that it decreases. The key is daily practice and repetition. Be sure to give yourself plenty of credit for what you're doing, and don't focus on what you're not able to do yet. If you take each step one at a time, you will reach your goals. Use the accomplishments section of your workbook to record your progress. Reread what you have been able to do over and over to yourself to give you that extra boost in confidence, especially when you're having those inevitable bad days or even a bad week.
I'm learning that to really practice, you just take a small step at a time and then take the time to acknowledge the positives that you accomplished from those steps. Before, I would want to go and want to have everything at once, and that was my, my test. And if I did not get it, then I felt it was a failure. And even though things may not have gone exactly like I wanted, I never gave myself credit for the small steps. So through the practicing, you learn to reinforce yourself for the small steps that you do accomplish.
One of the things you're practicing is not trying to do this all on your own. It's okay to reach out for help.
Support people, whether it's your spouse, a close family member, or a friend, can play an important part in your recovery. My support person was my husband, Gary, and I knew I could always count on him to be there for me whenever I experienced anxiety or panic. He couldn't always understand what I was going through or how I was feeling, but then I couldn't understand it myself. But he was patient with me, and he was encouraging, and he gave me that added measure of strength I needed to see me through many panic attacks. And then, during recovery, he practiced with me. He helped me face my fears, and he helped me reach my goals.
In this video, we have presented you with lots of information and many techniques to help you overcome your fears, phobias, and anxieties. You have to remember, however, that your fears and phobias did not develop just overnight. It took a long time for the phobias to reach the point that they are today. What this means is that you must consistently apply the techniques that we have given you on a daily basis. We have found that the key to success is daily practice. Some of you will need the additional help of a trained phobia therapist. If you call our pop line, we'll be glad to help you find a therapist in your area. Don't be ashamed to reach out for help. This is not a sign of weakness. It is not a sign of a personality flaw. As you've seen in this video, many other competent individuals, just like you, using these techniques, have been able to overcome their problems. So good luck and keep practicing.
Thank you to Donna, Joe, Kirk, and Nikki for sharing their stories with us.